We are going to start making our solid wood sign here this morning. And to do that, you're going to have to set up the parameters first for how big your sign is going to be. We're using VCarve Pro, so find that. This is VCarve Pro version 10.5. It should be on your desktop, or if you go down here to the start, you'll find all programs, and we'll get VCarve Pro 10.5. But the version may change, but this video should stay pretty similar. We are going to go to create a new file, and we want to punch in these sizes carefully. If we do something different than this, it may not fit on the CNC router. So we're going to say our width is 24 inches, our height is 8 inches, and our material thickness is 0.75 inches. Our Z0 position should be material surface, and our datum position is where we're going to start this. Should be right in the center of the page. This will change project to project, but for this one, we're going to find the middle of the board and reference from there. These don't really matter. It's just when we do a preview of it, what the wood looks like behind it. So if you have a different species of wood that you really want, feel free to change it. I don't know what Clavados is, so I'm going to try that. I'm going to say okay. So now we're getting to what your sign is going to say. I'm going to make a sign that's got my last name on it, and you've got a couple options. Because you need to have all of these letters touch, I'll show you what I mean. So if I go to text here and I type in Swenson, I would go true type. It gives you a little bit more options for fonts. Single line isn't really going to work because all of these texts or these fonts, all that's going to happen is just this single line is going to get cut out. And so this would create a negative image, that if you had a whole block of wood and you cut out your name or your last name or whatever you want to put on here, it would just cut this hole out. And I guess if you wanted to do that, that is okay, where if you held up a light behind it, your name would shine through. So that's an option for you. The nice thing about this, I'm just going to close this for a second. The nice thing about this, and I'm going to shrink it down a hair, maybe not quite that far, but if we go this route and we do these single line texts, we're going to be able to, so this does solve the problem of us not being able to connect all of our letters. This isn't super common, but if you want to go this route, feel free. I'm going to go back to here, and as long as, if I click away from it, my last name is not selected. But as soon as I click on it and I hit text tool, it brings Swenson back up and I can edit it. So let's say I want to be a little bit more traditional and I want to cut the letters out and have the letters all stick together. I'm going to pick a font that's pretty simple. And you can get a preview of these. Let's see. That one should work, but I'm even looking. Let's see if we go bold, what happens. Okay, I like this one a little bit better. We can play with the sizes if you want to play with the sizes here. You can. And I'm going to say, I think that these are all jammed too close together. So I'm going to unbold this. And I'm going to keep looking for a different font. What's this one do? I like that one. So we're looking for big, bold letters. The reason we want big and bold is because we have to get a router bit that's actually going to cut these out. And so if I get real small frilly letters, I'm going to have a hard time getting a router bit in between my letters. Okay, so I'm going to say close here. And then I'm going to resize this so it almost takes up the whole page. If we get an 8x24 piece of wood, we might as well use it up. I'm going to try to get that centered the best I can. Now, if I take a router bit right now and I cut out each of these letters, the problem is they're all going to be individual letters that aren't connected at all. So what I need to do is create some sort of a shape like this. And then what I'm going to do is move this up so it's touching my letters. And then I'm going to click on the Swenson, and let's see if we can do this all at once. And here, and I'm going to say fuse these. Let's see what it does, and it didn't do it the way that I wanted it to. So I'm going to hit Control-Z and undo it. I'm just going to do it one letter at a time. So if I want to do it to one letter at a time, I'm going to say Convert to Curves. Now I can select each letter individually. So I'm going to click on the S, hold down the Shift, and I'm going to say join these two. And because they're not touching, it's not joining. So I got to move this up until it's at least touching all of my letters. There we go. Now I have the rectangle selected, get the letters selected. There. So now we see the S is actually a part of it. Now I'm going to keep Shift held down. I'm going to go to the W and C. Same thing there. Then I click on the E, connect that. The N, connect that. Whoops. Connect the S. Connect the O. Connect the N. Okay, so now if I cut this all out, I'm missing some things for the W. I got to back up. Let's see if I can. What I'm going to do for the W, and I'm surprised I didn't do this for the N, is I am actually going to make another triangle here and connect that. So now that's its own. Let's see what happens here when I go, oops, daisy, select everything in the W. Now that triangle stays put, and it looks like it actually worked. There we go. So now we've got a triangle there, and I just repeat the process. It might do this for the end. Kept it that time. Okay, we're good. So all of this is connected. You can think of this sitting on a shelf or a mantle at home. Now I can do that with Swenson looking this way. And I think it's still pretty easy to read. Now here's another option that you can do, and I'm just going to slide this down, deselect it, and come back up here, hit the text tool. I'm going to write Swenson again. I'm going to look for a cursive script. And there's a few different cursive scripts that you can use. I'm going to try this one. You can also go this one. Again, I'm going to make it pretty big because we need to get a tool in there. And I don't know that I'm in love with this one because I think it's kind of hard to read. But we can do the same thing that we did before. We're going to convert this to curves. And our other option is we can move these and so they are all touching each other. And then I can mush them together that way. Now, the one issue that you're going to have is you're going to have some weak points here. So you've got a really small amount of wood connecting that. I can use my measurement tool, measure across. So that's a 1/4 inch that's connecting those together. So depending on what your last name is or whatever you want to put on here, you're going to have to be careful about which one that you want to do and how durable you want it to be. So this one down here is going to be probably more durable than this one up here. So I am going to delete this one and bring this one back up. You see signs like this a lot. I went to get some ideas for this class. I actually went to Hobby Lobby. I'm going to highlight this all and do this edit. And this will allow me to center this again. Get those nodes that I can. There we go. So now I'm back centered in my wood. I went to Hobby Lobby and just got different ideas for different signs that are made. And that's how I came up with the idea for this. But you see a lot of them look like this, signs that are connected on the bottom with a rectangle. So now we're going to start tool pathing this. We've got to tell the router, and we're going to use that small Laguna IQ or the Rockler CNC Shark. Either one is going to work just fine. We'll probably divide you up in class so that each of you can use each router at a different time. But we want to do this profile tool. So I'm sorry. Yeah, we want to do the profile toolpath. So profile toolpath is going to follow the line. We'll do other projects with the pocket toolpath, and on the pocket toolpath, you will have you're going to cut out between two lines. But for this one, we're going profile toolpath. We want this to cut all the way through. We're going to sand this to 3/4 of an inch thick, so 0.75. So we're actually going to go 0.755. So we're going to cut 5/1000ths through. Now we need to select our bit. There should be an end mill called a 1/4 inch end mill somewhere on here. And if you don't have that, find me and I will show you how we can cut this out, or how I can add that bit. So we've got a bunch of settings on here that you guys can just go ahead and copy for now. We'll eventually get to how we decide what all these are going to be, but it's real important that says tool number 1, and I'm going to hit select. Okay. We're cutting through. Now this thing says passes. This is automatically selected because we're telling it the deepest it can go per pass is 1/4 of an inch. So it's going to take 3 passes. Now we're going to want this to cut on the inside of the lines. So we'll see if it fits. We also want to always add a ramp for a toolpath. What this means is the toolpath doesn't go straight into your board. It comes in at an angle because there's no teeth on the bottom of an end mill. That's the tool we're using. We have to come in at an angle or else it'll break the bit. We'll do a ramp of 1, and we're going to call this letter cut 1. So now I got to select where I want it to go. I'm going to do, if you have initials like me, you're going to have to select these inside ones because they're all by themselves. I just want to get that W there. And then we're going to come back here. So we've got all of our settings done. We've named it. Now let's cut it and see. It says 1 open vectors were identified and is being ignored. Let's say okay and see what happens. This is giving us a warning that it's going to cut through our material, which we're okay with. Okay, so now we see that, we'll go back to 2D view here, that it did not fit inside of this triangle for some reason. My guess, so I think that first error message that came up said that this was not a closed vector, and so it couldn't cut. So what I'm going to do is click this, and we're going to say join open vectors. We can even give it a tolerance of 1, and it's still not going to let us close this vector. Let's see what it does. So it does something goofy like that. So we're going to undo this, and we're going to try. Let's go 1 at a time. It's strange why that is saying that's an open vector, because it does not look like an open vector to me. We're going to try to close it there. Let's give it one more try. We're going to open up this lettering toolpath. We're going to hold down Shift, click on this again, and then we're going to calculate it. And it worked that time. So we're good now. If I go back to the 2D view, we can see that we got it. So that button right there closed any vectors. What that meant is there are 2 lines weren't intersecting, and if we zoomed in, we could probably see them not intersecting. So now we see these tool paths are kind of opaque, or they're transparent so we can see through them. But we now know that we got that part cut out. So the next part, I should be able to click on one of these letters, and it should highlight the outline of all of them. So we're going to come back up here, same tool path, same depth, same bit, but now we want to be on the outside of it. So instead of cutting the inside, our router bit is going to be on the outside. To cut all this out, we want to add our ramps again. It should default to 1 inch, and we're going to call this letter outside. And calculate. Okay, we're getting the error that it's going to cut all the way through. That's okay. And you can see it's got 3 lines because those are the 3 passes. So this gives us part of the story, but if we really want to get a good view of this, we're going to say preview all tool paths, and it's going to show us what it looks like when it's cut out. we can see that these insides turn round because we're using a round tool path. So if you don't like how this looks, we can do a lot of things. We could change the font if you don't like the font, but this is really going to be what our project looks like when it's cut out on the CNC router. So if we're all happy with this, I can close this. I want to make sure that I've got my tool path checked, and then we're going to hit this save button. So this save button is going to be whichever router you're assigned to. It could be the CNC Shark. It could be the Laguna IQ. It's probably not going to be the SmartShop M. That is the great big one. Let's do the Laguna IQ HHC. That's the small black one. So we're telling it that we want to save it in the file type that that router is going to recognize, and I'm going to hit Save Tool Path. Now I need to tell it where. You should have a flash drive come up somewhere, and you should save it as your last name, and this should be good. So we'll save it there. I'm saving it on a flash drive. Then I hit Save. Oh, it opened up a folder for me on my flash drive, and I hit Save. So now it should be all saved. What I'm going to do is go back to that flash drive, find it. I don't remember which. I'm going to do it again because I don't remember where I saved it. I just wanted to save it on the cruiser. I'm going to save mine on the desktop because I know where that is and I can show you the next step. Too many files on my flash drive. All right, now I'm going to open up that file that I just saved on the desktop. And we're going to get that G code, okay? So some of this should really start looking familiar. Remember, everything in the parentheses isn't going to be cut. But we're seeing that M00 spindle speed of 18,000, which is good. And now there's going to be lots of lines. Imagine having to do this one by hand. I'm not expecting you to be able to know what every single one of those things is doing. But one thing we always want to check is we'll go to Find Next, Z negative. So you may have to type in Z negative. But what we want to see is how deep this is cutting. So remember, this is all in millimeters, or it could be in inches. The Laguna IQ is all in millimeters. The older CNC Shark is in inches. But we want to look and see what our negatives are. So we're at negative 0.35 millimeters. That is how deep it's going to cut into the spoil board, which we're okay with on this one. So we're going to keep finding next. So we may have a problem here because that is negative 5 millimeters, negative 6 millimeters. That's negative 10, negative 12. So what we're seeing is this is going to cut way in to our spoil board. So something's wrong here. What I want to do so I don't screw these up is I'm going to delete this real quick because I don't accidentally want to save that. So it's on my desktop, date modified. I'm going to delete this. Okay, and my problem might be right here when I said material surface or machine bed. So material surface is correct. Machine bed would be incorrect, and I actually just made a mistake there. So I'm going to save this again. Put this on my desktop, save, okay, we'll go find it, date modified. Oh my goodness, I'm struggling here. I made the mistake. We're cutting all the way through this, so we are going to see big negative values. So we're going to go find next, Z negative. So 19 or 20 millimeters is 3/4 of an inch thick. So if I see anything going deeper than 19 or 20, I know that I'm going to have a problem. So there's Z19. That's good. That's as deep as we're going. So anything deeper than Z19 or 20 is going to be a red flag for us. I can just keep holding down, or I can keep hitting enter fast as I can. We're going to have lots of Z negatives. And I'm just holding this down, kind of scanning to make sure that I'm not getting anything deeper than 19 or 20. There we go. We're good. Alrighty. So I scanned that. We're good to go here. So then we can take this over to our CNC router. I like to have you double check this to make sure that we know we're starting from the center, because if we click this down here, our project is not going to cut correctly. So I can now take my flash drive over to the CNC router and cut this out.